You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to Salford City Radio, 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show, with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. And we're very fortunate in this show to have interviewed some of the world's best athletes, sports people who work in football and various sports across a wide range of disciplines, coaches, trainers, sports psychologists. We also have interviewed some of the most influential people in the field of psychology and related fields to speak about their perception and theory and just general discussions around the field of mental health. Today, we have a very special guest. As part of our International Perspectives segment, we sort of speak to people around the world. We're going quite a distance today, which should be interesting to sort of get a perspective of our guest today around football, who's been abroad, who's been over to the UK as well, so I'm sure he'll be able to sort of give us an insight into his career. He's an outstanding goalkeeper, highly respected goalkeeper, who's had a great career that keeps on going, still going. He's playing for a team in Queensland called Peninsula Power. They're doing well, so I'll show you a bit more about how things are going on. Phil Zabaks, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
GM, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's good to speak to you, Phil. I suppose we sort of start from the beginning on this show in terms of how you sort of got into being a goalkeeper. What was sort of your inspirational moment to sort of play in goal?
Yeah, so I guess growing up, my mum or my parents wanted to put me into a sport to stay fit and healthy, and I wasn't a talented kid by any means. I was probably bone-eared and a little bit skinny, and if I got hit on the rugby league field, I'd probably snap a bone. So
yeah.
They put me onto the soccer pitch, and funnily enough, I gravitated towards goalkeeping because I like jumping around and hurting myself, which sounds stupid, but we're all a bit crazy, aren't we?
Yeah. No, that's the goalkeepers union there, that's for sure. And and so in terms of yourself, so you start playing in goal, and at what point did you realise that you had the ability to sort of to do well, to have a decent career in goal?
I think it was the support of family and friends to start. So my parents always wanted me to try and play at the best level I could, and I didn't believe I had the ability to start with. Thankfully, I got picked up through trialling with the club, Marconi, back in the day. The goalkeeper coach there said, "You're probably not at a level that you need to be to play for the club, but I want to train you for 12 months. Would you like to come and join us at training?" And I think that was to open the door. That was Ron Gisborne. I'm really thankful for him. Mm-hmm. He then took me to a different level where I actually could believe in myself that I did have the skills and the ability and the raw talent. It just needed to be unlocked and harnessed, and to bring that potential out of me. Yeah. And from there, I just went from strength to strength, which I'm really fortunate. I've played with some great goalkeeper coaches over the years and some great teams, and it just came down to, all right, I know I'm talented enough. How far can I push it, and how much can I achieve in this just short period of time?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say, and I mean, Australia's had some great goalkeepers over the years. We can think back to Mark Bosnich, Schwarzer, Ryan lately, and I'm sure there's many more just off the top of my head. I mean, in terms of yourself, Phil, did you have any sort of role models, any goalkeepers you looked up to and thought, okay, did you have any sort of role models yourself that you'd look at, or?
Not really. I think I respect and appreciate everyone that I played with or played against, but I never had a role model that said I want to be like that goalkeeper. I think I wanted to carve out my own legacy, my own career and journey, and be proud of where I started and where I finished up. And I am proud of that, because I look back at where I started to what I've achieved, and I can sit there and say that people have helped me along the way, but I never got a handout, so everything I've done is from my own hard work and my own ability, and I think that really makes me appreciate such a blessed life in football.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point, and I think that that's important for any young person listening to sort of. I think that's a great takeaway, Phil, for them to sort of just be your own. Obviously, appreciate other people's abilities, but be your own role model as such, where you go out there and be the best you can be. And in terms of your own sort of career, I mean, what sort of challenges did you have in your own career, Phil? What sort of I know you've had a few challenges and you've always had the strength to overcome them, but is there anything that sort of sticks to mind?
Yeah, there's a handful of pivotal points. I think the first is that because I was never brought up in an elite system or a club that was at the top of the game at a young age, I was always overlooked for the keeper that had been at the club or knew family or friends of coaches or players. That was the first hurdle to overcome. after I carved a first grade position for myself, the next challenge was trying to break through to a professional level. And that's where injuries come in. So I had quite a serious head injury back in 2010 where I needed emergency brain surgery.
Wow.
So that obviously set my career back a little bit. I mean, I had surgery and 10 weeks later I'm playing in a grand final. So that's just the mentality that I put to myself, that I'm not going to have a neurosurgeon or a doctor tell me if I can or can't play football. I'm actually going to find that out for myself. But then I had another injury 12 months later, and unfortunately they got told I couldn't play football in New South Wales anymore, so I packed up my bags and moved to Queensland.
Wow.
The professional side was probably off the table, but it was more about me wanting to achieve more post-surgery, because the excuse was there that if I didn't achieve anything, that I could easily sit there and say, look, I had a brain injury, you know, I was set up to fail, but I actually made that a reason why I would succeed, to say that, well, who's to say that I can't be more successful and achieve more things post-surgery with everything stacked against me than, you know, before that. So that's everyone has a setback in their career, and you can sit there and blame it, or you can sit there and make it the reason why you are successful. So I took the latter.
I mean, that's huge, Phil. I mean, obviously, you know, there's injuries. There's many different injuries people pick up in sport and football, you know, from, you know, a wide range of injuries. But obviously, you know, brain injury, you know, that sort of to come back from that, and and then to play in the grand final 10 weeks later. I mean, did you have any in yourself? I mean, how did you find the resolve to do that, Phil? I mean, it must have taken a lot of, you know, guts to do that and to think, you know what, I'm going to sort of go for it.
Yeah, I think I realised that I didn't want someone else to tell me when my football career was over. I think that was the hardest thing to sit there and hear, that a neurosurgeon's like, I don't think you should play football again. And my first question was, well, when can I start training? I think I just realised I was in my mid-20s. I was playing extremely well before that. I was really happy with where I was at. I was loving life, and just have someone say literally 2 days later saying, you can not play the game you love. That's all, you know, that's all I enjoy and have focused on. I thought, well, no, you know what? I'm going to go and explore this avenue for myself, and I would like it to be on my terms. So it was difficult, Jim. Like I lost about 15 kilos in about a week, because I was, you know, in ICU and bedridden. So I had to have a strict weights routine. I had to eat more food that I could keep down, which was annoying. People had to drive me to training, so I had family and friends and partners do all that for me, which was fantastic. Like, the support of the people around me definitely was a foundation for getting back on my feet, because without that I would have given up, because I didn't have enough energy or belief on my own. I needed support of family and friends. Yeah,
absolutely, and I mean, that sort of shows the determination you had, and, you know, obviously many different people listen and to the show, and I mean, who's to say? Well, I mean, obviously, you know, people who have injuries, and like you mentioned there, I think that, you know, sometimes, not that I'm suggesting to go against a medical professional's prognosis, but
no, please don't.
Phil's a goalkeeper, and he's a unique type of person, but it does show one thing for sure, that, you know, who knows what's possible. It's as well, I suppose. Sometimes, you know, we do see people who sort of, for one reason or the other, kind of lose the love for the game or the passion for the game. But it does go to show that, you know, sometimes things defy whatever expectation, really. I mean, you've played obviously in New South Wales and in Queensland. I'm just interested to know, what's your sort of take on the difference in the league? Where do you sort of see the two leagues in terms of standard, Phil, between, say, Sydney and Brisbane?
Yeah, interesting question. They're very different but very similar at the same time. So I believe the Sydney obviously has the financial backing of a lot of clubs. There's a lot of legacy clubs there that, you know, that are backed by, you know, there's always generally and always authenticity to a club, which is great. So the fans are passionate. Yeah. There's money pouring in, so the money's a lot better. So, you know, people like myself could have a full-time job and still afford to play football, because it is super competitive. Every week felt like a grand final. Yeah. So it didn't matter if you were top of the league or bottom of the league. Like, you had to fight week after week. So the first year we won the Premiership at Sutherland, two of the last 3 games of the season, we played last and second last. We lost both games.
Wow!
Like, that's how tough the league was.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. I think it develops character and skill sets. So if you want to go overseas and aspirations like England was an eye opener for me. Like, they're just on a totally different level again.
Yeah.
So it's to prepare us for overseas, because we're a little bit I think, a little bit sheltered to how competitive life is over there in England. It's a business, and it's cutthroat. And I felt that. Look, it broke me when I went over, like it did, and I'm okay to admit that, because you can have the talent, but if you don't have the mental toughness and you're ready for it, it will eat you alive, and it ate me.
That's a great point.
Yeah, in Queensland, there's a lot of young kids in here because the money's not there, but the talent is, and you do it for the passion and love. So, I love seeing the FFA Cup that we brought out, many years ago in Australia, where if you get to the round of 32, we go into a national pool and we can play other clubs from other states. Yeah. It's a great opportunity to, test ourselves against, tactics and skill set. But look, overall, I think I'd still love to be playing in New South Wales week in, week out than Queensland, but I'm extremely thankful I can play in Queensland because, I can probably, thankfully I've had that time in New South Wales. It gives me the experience to get away with not being as fit and young as quick as the young kids up here in Queensland.
Absolutely. And in terms of, there's been talk about, that's probably outside sort of the remit of the sort of conversation, but I've heard sort of that there might be a second league, Phil. Is that something that sort of, like you got the A League, for our listeners, it's Australia, the top league is the A League, then you've got each state has their own leagues, and do you think there's a chance of that to happen? I mean, it comes and goes, that sort of, we hear it.
Look, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think that Australia has the capacity to have a second professional league. I just don't think the money's there, the infrastructure's there, the sponsorship's there. Like, even if you've got some of the great NSL clubs back in the day from your Sydney and Melbourne's, they might have the financial capacity, but they just don't have this. I don't believe they've got the stadiums or the infrastructure to host it and hold it. Yeah. And unfortunately, I just don't think, like, the A League's a great league, but again, I just don't think we've got enough of a backing as a society in Australia that supports it enough. We've become very much armchair sort of sports people now in Australia. I think there's less people playing the game. There's less elite athletes overseas. Like, how many Australians are playing in the Premier League at the moment?
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
To 10 years ago, and I'm not being harsh against the people that live in Australia, but I'm like, I just don't think you understand how tough it is to be at the elite level and to compete against the elite when a lot of us are comfortable playing in Australia, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of us don't want to go overseas anymore because we're happy here.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I don't think there'll ever be a second tier professional level. I don't.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean, you made some great points there. Obviously, the distance too, the travelling distance as well for a second league, and I suppose there's logistical issues that would have to be looked into. I suppose in saying that, Phil, the argument would be there's some big clubs like you mentioned, maybe in New South Wales, the Marconis of this world, who might argue that they could sort of, if they could just get promoted in there, and it's a difficult one really to, I suppose there's no easy solutions to it, but I suppose it is a shame some teams don't get a chance to sort of knock on that door and get in there.
You're right. I think that, to see the greats of the NSL days not being able to compete for promotional A League, it can be a little bit frustrating, and that's why they disbanded the league originally, to have, just start fresh, to have new clubs with new identities. And look, if players are good enough, they'll make an A League side. There's nothing about it, but it seems to have lost a little bit of its cultural feel and the great rivalries of the world that other, like your England, your Italy's and Spain have. Your rivals come together. Sure, there's rivalry in Australia, but it's what, like 15, 20 years old? It's not 40, 50 years old.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so that's a great point. I think from what you said there, I think that they did try, didn't they, bringing in like the Western Sydney club but it takes time. There's not really generations, sort of, I guess, to sort of get to that level where people are really, fired up when they play against each other. Really, that's for sure. And your own highlight, Phil. I mean, you sort of managed to sort of have a great career thus far. I'm sure there's plenty, more to come. But what would you say your highlights are in general in your own career?
My highlights, I'd love to say my resilience. So obviously my first year of playing Premier League is always a highlight, because you always remember your debut when you make a first team football team. Winning your first premiership, I mean, that's always something that stays with you forever, and thankfully I've been fortunate enough to be a part of 6 premiership winning teams. So the first one was I celebrated as much as I've celebrated my 6th, and hopefully go for a 7th this year. So extremely lucky that way. Probably probably one of the two biggest highlights is coming back from that head injury and playing in grand final and putting in a man of the match performance. That just was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But outside of that, when the FFA Cup was established, I got to captain my side to a round of 32 win against one of the Adelaide sides, and then we played Perth Glory in the FFA Cup round of 16, and we took them all the way to injury time, and we ended up losing 1-0. But the experience to sit there and go, for 119 minutes we competed with professionals, that's what it was all about. And the Boys Cup, we still talk about that today. That was back in 2015. So, in a couple of weeks' time, September 14th, I get another chance to play FFA Cup round of 32 against Brisbane Roar, and I'm fortunate enough to have that opportunity to play for another A-League side, and that will be another highlight and pinnacle point of my career.
That's definitely something we'll look out for sure. Phil, that'd be sort of great to see. Yeah, no, definitely. So that's our listeners, definitely keep an eye on, and that must be an exciting opportunity for you to test yourself again against obviously the sort of the top team and the top league. In terms of your sort of academy, Phil, I know you started an academy. How's that sort of going on?
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so at the start of the year, there's a lot of chat in the local Facebook groups about there's not enough goalkeeper coaching available, or everything's affiliated to a club. So I just thought, you know what, the same way that I started out at Marconi with Rod Gisborne, I'm like, why can't I create an academy where any goalkeeper at any level can come and experience what it's like to have 20 years of knowledge put into them for like an hour a week.
Yeah.
I didn't want to affiliate myself with a club that I didn't want to be tied down by the politics of it. It was like, you know what, if you want me, you get me. I'm hands-on.
Yeah.
I need the support of other clubs around me for their grounds and facilities, which is great. I found 4 great clubs that I partnered up with, and it was a case of, I had everyone from beginner-level goalkeepers up to the elite level that were asking for the services, and it made me feel good that I could finally give back the way that I wanted to and share my knowledge in a way that I thought it needed to be shared without I've always encouraged people. There'll be a time where I'll turn on them quickly so they get used to being yelled at, because not all coaches are like me. They're not all nice. But it was about how can I put 20 years of all my coaches into one package where you can come and not just learn the skill set side of the game, but the mental side and the mental toughness, because it's all about that.
Absolutely, yeah, that's really good, Phil. And I suppose it's open to sort of different levels as well. It's not just like an elite academy, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. So I run like a junior session between the ages of 8 up to 13, and then I run a 14s to open level. And I make sure that I try and keep drills that are relevant, that are game realistic. We don't do all the classic drills of sit down and I'll throw 10 balls side to side. What? Let's just get. This is a game. We stand around for 15 minutes, and all of a sudden a striker pings one top corner. Like, there's no time to warm up. You just got to go. Let's make the drills realistic and move you. I call it training in disguise. So a lot of my drills will incorporate fast feet work, good hands, turning, spotting the ball early, but they won't know that because all they focus on is catching the ball. And I'm okay with that, because afterwards I'm like, we've learned 4 different exercises or 4 different skills in that exercise. Can anyone name them? And everyone's like, I caught a ball. And I'm like, well, yeah, but you also did X, Y, Z. And they're like, oh, that makes sense.
Absolutely, and it's sort of, I think that's one thing for sure. I mean that's sort of one thing I think that generally speaking, Phil, like it's like specialist goalkeeper training isn't always easy to sort of find. I think for me sometimes sort of goalkeeper training is kind of not overlooked, but it might be part of team training. The goalkeepers go to one side type thing, but you find it gives everyone an opportunity to sort of to even have a go at trying to see where they are as a keeper.
Yeah, it's difficult because historically, like, the goalkeeper at the back, we'll stick him in for 15 minutes for shots worth at the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Balls. And I'm like, but hang on, let's flip that. Why don't the strikers, midfield, and defenders come train an hour and a half with the goalkeepers and then go try and like pass the ball on the field? Like, you don't understand. You get really good the more you do something. And
absolutely,
I heard a saying once that mastery is 10,000 hours of anything.
Yeah.
When it comes, it's 10,000 hours. So 10,000 hours of goalkeeping is generally 10,000 hours plus your normal training, because your normal training doesn't generally give you the capacity to get better.
Exactly.
It's just highlighting your skill set and the weak points in your game. So shooting's great, but that's essentially the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg.
No, definitely, and also the practice you do too. Like you said, it's important. It's focused, and it's sort of to meet the demands of being a keeper, and maybe even individualised too in terms of identifying strengths and weaknesses too, and sort of going from there. Do you do physical training too with the keepers, Phil, or just is it technical, or do you do a bit of both?
I try and get a little bit of the physical side in, but more around the game realistic of, a lot of up and down, a lot of fast feet, I love working and training at fatigue. So if you can train a keeper at fatigue when your legs are sore, your quads are heavy, your arms are a little bit slower, and your mind's not there, if you can start to catch balls like 5 and 6 in a row there, that when you're fresh on the field, you should be able to catch it every single time. I really work in short, like similar to when I did some SAQ work with you. It's short, sharp interval training with quick recovery. I mean, that's a goalkeeper essentially. We work 15 seconds max, maybe 20.
Absolutely.
If you've worked for 20, you probably haven't caught the ball, so you should probably catch it next time. But that's that's just been super critical.
That's a good point, Phil. I think that's really important, and sort of young sort of people listening, well, of any age really, but young people sort of listening to that, I think it's sort of key in terms of, not just a question of going out there and practicing, it's sort of focusing on what you're doing too. And in terms of yourself, Phil, I mean, if you could sort of go back to when you sort of started your career, say, I know you sort of started playing in goal, very young, but if you could sort of go back to an early moment on your journey, what would you say, Phil, to your younger self, sort of, if you could sort of go back, and what would you say you've learned along the way?
Look, mindset is king. I mean, you have to believe in your own ability and back your own ability, and it's okay if you're not where you want to be, but I think you've got to appreciate how far you've come. So for me, it was always like, I want to be better, I want to be at this club, I want to be doing that, but you sort of lose focus of, actually rewarding yourself for what you've accomplished. I'd also say weaknesses in your game, you have to, non-negotiable, you have to work on them regardless if you love them or hate them, because I didn't work on my weaknesses until my mid-20s, and I was exposed with some of those, and that really, I'd rather you get embarrassed at training and make 10 mistakes than make one mistake in a vital game and then everyone looks at you funny and starts to laugh, because that's just what happens.
And absolutely.
And you would know, you know yourself, Jim, in England, a goalkeeper makes a mistake, the opposition fans are brutal. Like, they will ride you all day for 90 minutes.
Absolutely.
So it's working on that, but also outside the field, you need to work on things that you can do, like, especially for a goalkeeper, like plyometrics, SAQ work. You need to work on your core strengths. You need to work on your upper body strengths for arms. You need to work on your jump and your quad strength. Like, there's so much outside of football that goalkeepers should be doing.
Absolutely.
That I wish I knew. Now so when you step on the field, debate me on this if you want, but if you step on the field, you've got to be the fittest person on that team, bar none.
Absolutely. I absolutely feel. I think it's key in every position to. That's a huge thing, and certainly, it's a huge takeaway for a lot of players, and certainly something I suggest to players that one thing you can do is get yourself as fit and strong as you possibly can to play the game, and it's one variable sort of that you can sort of go into the game, but absolutely, Phil, I think that's sort of key. And in terms of any young players, Phil, you've been abroad, you've sort of been over to the UK, Italy, to Europe, and obviously you've played in New South Wales and Queensland now. If there's any sort of young person listening, we've got a lot of young listeners listen who sort of have aspirations to play football at various levels. What would you say to them, Phil? I mean, I know it's hard to advise people, everyone's on their own journey, but what's maybe a few pointers you could sort of give to them?
Yeah, you know what, Jim, this might sound a bit funny, but you need to be not scared of success. And what I mean by that is that, so me being an Australian, coming overseas, success to me meant I'd have to leave my family, leave my friends, going to an environment that, everyone hated me because I'm taking their mate's position, and all of a sudden you think about all these things, all right, if I do make it, I have to give up an entire life and move my life overseas, and for some people that's a really scary, thought process, and then you start to actually question yourself, or you start to play within your ability, or 90 or 80% of your ability, and then you don't make it. I'd rather that someone goes out there, gives 100% and doesn't have any regrets, or thinks back when they get to my age about, I remember that training session I had and I should have gone for that ball and I didn't, and what if that was the moment that the coach saw me and went, you know what, I need to sign this keeper. So I think being able to segment that and saying that, you know what, if I go over there, I'm going to give it my absolute everything and not leave any room in the tank for an excuse, because the last thing, you can never get regret back. Regret's one of the biggest things that it will stay with you for the rest of your life. So for young kids, train hard, have a goal, have a focus, but when you get there, back your inability to go and do what you need to do. And a lot of that comes down to your headspace of, all right, for the next 20 minutes, I'm on the park, I'm going to forget everything else that's going on in my personal life because I can pick that up after I get off the field. And I'm going to focus on playing my game. I know how good I can play. I need to play to my own ability. And if I'm not good enough, then that's okay. I can go somewhere else for someone that will appreciate me.
Yeah, that's a great point.
For keepers, like, I'll go to some clubs and they're like, Phil, you're not the keeper for us. And my first response is, that's okay. I'll go and be appreciated somewhere else, and I'll come back and I'll win a title in 12 months' time. And I've done it. When the coach turns around and says to me, you know what, Phil, the biggest mistake we ever made was passing you up. And all I can sit there is shake their hand and say, I appreciate the feedback. Thank you very much. Like,
absolutely,
don't bring out the arrogant side of things. I've always been very much a gentleman in the field that I'll treat a win the same way I treat a loss. I'll congratulate everyone. I'll be okay within my own ability. And, I think that just speaks volumes for a legacy that I want to leave in football, that when someone hears my name, and Jim, we haven't met for almost, it's been 18 years since
absolutely,
I remember you because you were such a good person to me, and I'd like to think you remember me because I was the kid that never gave up, even though I couldn't run.
I mean, it's I think one thing that for me, Phil, with yourself, you see determination, and sort of, I think that was a huge. I think with football, Phil, it's a fine margins really. I don't like to use the word luck, but I think sometimes it's sort of right time, right place, and there's so many people who've got similar abilities. There's not much difference in their abilities. It's just a question of many variables. It's not always a question of abilities, but I like the attitude you have, Phil, because it's like, you keep going. You don't sort of get disillusioned by it all. You find your level, or there's every chance you could have played, at the very highest level, and you played at a very high level anyway. But I suppose there's things that come into it. There's so many variables, and I think for any young person to listen to you, I think it's a great takeaway that it's not always down to your ability. It's down to what the coach is looking for. There's politics in the game. There's probably 100 keepers of a similar ability going for one place. So it's on the day.
It is. You're right. You're really tough, and I love the people that say, "Oh, you must have been so lucky." And you know what? Luck to me is when preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you prepare the right way and your opportunity presents itself, it's not luck. Because I can tell you now, the people playing at the highest level, they're not lucky. Yes, they might have got a break that you didn't get, and they might have got seen at the right time.
And that's as far as it goes. 100%.
That's up to a coach or a manager. And you know what? I'm sure there's times where people look at me and go, Phil, you're so lucky to have the career you've got. And I am blessed, but I can go to bed at night saying, you know what, I think I thoroughly deserve it, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And if I told some of the young keepers out there or players what I've been through and the amount of effort and hard work that I have to put in, I dare say some of them would never go down that journey, because it's not a fun journey at times. It can be really lonely, and it can break you. And I mean, it can seriously break you.
No, definitely, that's a great point, and we do see that certainly with professionals, with academy players who get released. And I like the point you made there, for any young person listening about sort of luck, and we sort of look at keepers and think, or any sports person, there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and I think that the luck component is just basically, maybe right time, right place, but the point is, if you don't have the ability, you don't work hard, then opportunities present themselves, you're not going to get there. But there's no career that's been built on fortune. It's just like he says, like your career has been built on resilience and strength, determination, and perhaps there's certain players out there that right time, right place, and they're on the way, but you won't maintain a career that way. And I think any young listeners listening to that, there's a huge takeaway. You've got to work hard, you've got to put the effort in, you've got to really want to do it. That's the sort of key. You've got to enjoy it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Jim, the thing is that positive affirmation is great for players, and people thrive off that. I thrive off positive affirmation, but I also thrive off the thought that someone turns around to me and says, Phil, you'll never be able to, you know what, I had a coach tell me once, you'll never play first grade in New South Wales. You'll never play first grade. Yet 6 years later, he signed me as their first grade keeper in the New South Wales Premier League. So for me, it's like, all right, I'm going to use this as motivation to help drive me. So for every ball I don't want to go to, I'm going to die for that extra ball. I'm going to do that extra push-up. I'm going to do that extra burpee. I'm going to do that extra shuttle run. I'm going to do that extra weight session during the week. So, use that. The people that pay you out or have a go at you or try and put you down, you need to actually flip that around and go, no, make that the fuel about why I'm going to be successful. So one day you can turn around and then shake their hand and say, hey, by the way, thanks for the game, but I'm going to go collect my premiership now. I'll see you next year. To me, that might borderline on arrogance, but at the same time it doesn't, because I'm like, hang on, you fired the first shot at me, you said I'm no good, now I'm standing out in front of you, like, thanks for coming, I appreciate you motivating me.
Absolutely, yeah, no, for sure. That's a great point, and I think that, exactly, it's just someone's opinion, and you've got to bounce back from that, that's for sure. And in terms of going forward, Phil, what's your sort of vision, I know obviously you've got no doubt goals that are close to your chest, I think, but where do you sort of see yourself from where you are? You've got the academy, you're sort of still playing, and what's going forward for you? What's sort of the next chapter, Phil?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I haven't shared this with many people, but the reason why I stopped playing was because I actually got let go at the club I was playing at. So in 2016, finished up the season, we won the Premiership, won the Grand Final here, which is a big deal in Australia.
Yeah.
Was captain of the club, most successful era they've had, and then the coach turned around and said, "Oh, Phil, you're not needed here anymore. We're not going to re-sign you." And I was like,
"Wow,
can I stay and fight for my spot?" And they're like, "No, you can't." And I went, "So seriously, I can't even re-sign as a second keeper?" And they're like, "No, we don't want you here. We're rebuilding." I'm like, that hurt. So I took a year off football. Things off the field started to go downhill, so I had a couple of relationship breakdowns, and I thought I need to get my headspace back to a spot where I know is comfortable, and I love football and football loves me, and it hasn't been easy. There's been times talking to the boys before a game where I've just broken down in tears because I feel so broken, but stepping out between the sticks, I'm like, this is home to me, this is where I'm loved, this is where I can quantify my achievements and I can measure what I've achieved, and that brought me back to life. So for where I am now, where I haven't played at a competitive level like this for 3 years previous, that when I got the call last year with Peninsula Power where they said, "Phil, we've got 6 games to go, we need to win all 6. Last year we were 10 points clean, we lost the league, we need someone with your experience to step in and do a job, can you do it?" My first thought was, mate, you've called the right person, let's get it done.
Absolutely.
So we went 6 from 6, and I probably pulled off one of the most important saves of my career at 2-2, 92nd minute. I save a ball far post, I catch the corner, I pumped up the other end, and we win 3-2 in the 95th. Like, to me, those moments is 30 years of training and hard work that have just come off in the space of 2 minutes. So for me, I think this will be my last year. I'm only playing again because Peninsula signed as a backup, and unfortunately their first team to get got injured, and he was having a great season, and my heart breaks for him. Like, 12 games undefeated, he conceded 6 goals in 12 games. Like, the guy is phenomenal, but injuries happen, right? So for me, it's like, let me step in and let me help finish what he started and win a premiership on his behalf or with him.
Brilliant.
But after this, I don't know if my body will hold up, but at the same time, I actually want to give the younger kids an opportunity to experience what I experienced. I don't want to take someone else's spot now. I think my journey is coming to an end, and I'm okay with that, and I've made peace with it. So what's next, Jim? I don't know. Maybe I focus on the academy. Maybe I help the young kids out of tomorrow. Talk about mental health. Men's mental health is a massive issue, and I'm extremely passionate about it. Because I've been there, I've been depressed, I've been sitting in my room thinking, I don't want to get out of bed today, I just want to sleep all day. Like, it's not a nice place to be. So even if your listeners want to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to have a chat, because sometimes it's easy to chat to someone that you have no affiliation with, because you don't feel like you need to impress me. Like, I don't care what you say, you don't have to impress me, I just want to give you honest feedback about my experience. So I think I'd love to get into motivational speaking or mentorship or men's mental health. That's where I'd like to go.
No, that's interesting. We'll certainly watch this sort of space, that's for sure. In terms of the academy, if anyone's sort of listening, the show has listeners all over, really. Is there any way they can sort of access it? Is there a Facebook page, Phil, or contact details if they're looking to sort of maybe do some academy training?
Yeah, so it's called Zabaks Goalkeeper Academy. Goalkeeper Academy, sorry. So I've got a Facebook page, I've got an Instagram page, so you can track me down on those. At the moment I've had to press pause on the academy because I'm back to 2 or 3 nights training with Peninsula, which is, it was a tough decision to make, but I said to myself that, football years are limited, and it felt like, 20 years ago I made my debut, and now I'm at the end of my career. Like, I actually want to enjoy every last minute I can and actually, suckle the life out of my football career.
Absolutely,
and this will be it for me. So, I don't mind putting that on hold for 6 months and then getting back together, but with the team. But I can coach for the next 20 or 30 years easily. But
absolutely,
football, I dare say 2021 is the last season.
Well, we watch your space, and that's for sure, Phil. Obviously you've got to do what's right for you and see how you feel and sort of go from there. But it's been a pleasure talking to you, Phil. It's been really interesting speaking to you, and sort of we certainly wish you all the success. So it's been great of you to join us and take the time to share some of your experiences and insights into the game. Thanks, Phil. We really appreciate it.
Jim. And Jim, you know what? I appreciate you reaching out, and for all your listeners out there, I can tell you now that Jim found me when I was in England and I'd been broken. I'd been told that my passport wouldn't allow me to play as a European player, so I was about to head home, and Jim said, "Hey, come train with me for 2 weeks. Let's get you fit and healthy. And by the way, here's some contacts in America you should reach out to." And Jim, you know what? You're one of the most pivotal people in my career, and I've probably never told you this, but you definitely set me back on the course of having the most successful career, and you're probably one of the most significant reasons why I'm here today and I've achieved what I've achieved, because without you, I dare say I would have gone home and quit. And that's hand on heart honesty right there.
Thanks, Phil. That's that's just sort of I'm not often speechless, but yeah, it's sort of no, definitely. It's been a pleasure. I mean, obviously, it's happy to help in any way I can. Really, it's one of them. I think like yourself, I love the game, and I sort of admire people like yourself who have a go, and absolutely. But yeah, I mean, credit to you, and I'm sure that, like you said, you'll certainly leave a legacy in the game as a player and as a coach, no doubt. That's for sure. So thanks for joining us, Phil. That was great to speak to you. That was Phil Zabaks, who's all the way over in Queensland, in Brisbane, in Australia, who's shared some really interesting insights, some international perspectives on the show for Salford City Radio 94.4 FM with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, the Friday Sports Show.